grown into the right between here and the river. And between here and the river is probably maybe a quarter of a mile, or maybe not quite.
Who farmed it?
Different people.
It looks like it's pretty low. Look, you got water standing here.
Well, there's a spot right there where there was a little pond where they used to drain most of the field, but the field was up as high as our farm, or most of the farms around the river. And there was a house right back in about here somewhere, all right on the river, where Willie Walker's brother lived for many years, and he farmed this field for quite a few years and all.
I made a mistake yesterday, Wes. I told you the Aunt Mary and Uncle Willie, their last name was Williford, it was Walker.
It's where the Williford.
Williford was the man that Dad had 3 sisters. The oldest was Elizabeth, and she married Julius Glisson. They had 1 daughter, and the daughter married a boy named James Williford, who had 3 sons. And one of the sons is the gentleman who was the father of one of the famous people of the family, such as she is.
Showing me to turn
further right along here somewhere.
It's saying turn on 19th. Let's turn here.
But there was nothing there historic. It's just that it was where there was a well and some other stuff. And Tim Carey was the fellow's name that was a good friend of my parents and whatnot. And he come down, and I think he had a few trailers in here and a cabin or 2. And he had a house that was right on the river down here, and there was several places along there. It was what they called next to this was what they call May Park. There was some people by the name of May had 2 or 3 houses and a rental place or 2. They were from Michigan. The next place was Lofton's Camp, which was a gentleman and his wife that had a cottage or 2 to rent, and he had an oyster bar where he sold oysters that he collected every year off of his bar on the river. And then the next place was the boys that had a beer would have one. All of this was tomato fields, except starting right here, from here up to probably the next, past the big pile of soil up there, was one of the best red grapefruit groves on the west coast of Florida.
Looks like they might be trying to develop it for a subdivision or something.
All right, John Y.
Yes, sir.
Let's get up here, not too far, and turn to the right.
Tell me when.
Oh, 7th, probably about 5th or 6th.
Here's 6 right here.
Go to 5th. Let's see where I'm at now. Did look a little similar.
Now, Poppie, you weren't out there skinny dipping, were you?
Where?
Off of that point we were talking about?
Son, when we were skinny dipping off that point, there wasn't a damn building within a half a mile of it. Turn to the left here. This is Aunt Mary and Uncle Willie's old house here on the left, the brown one. When he died, they gave it to the woman that had taken care of both of them. Had taken care of Mary after she retired and looked after Willie. Turn to the right when you get up to the street.
It's like speed bumps and speed humps.
And my godfather, who came down from Ohio in the late 20s or early 30s, had a house that was probably right in here somewhere. It was not blocked off like it is now. And that was where his place was. Just keep going. We're going out to college across.
Where was the store at, Poppie?
What store?
The store that Grandpa had, Poppie had, my Poppie had.
You talking about the old store?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's where we're going.
Okay.
Up the bridge, and I don't think see it. Holding them. Okay. Years ago, this was a meandering stream, and all the places in it, it was shallow in places, but it was sawgrass, and they came in, the Dickman family got permission to dredge and made it a pretty decent waterway all the way up to 41, which is only about a half mile. And they built, or they created cul-de-sac points all up and down here between the up at the end of it in town and out toward Shell Point. Go ahead. And that's up where a lot of the development came from.
So, see the plant with the roots going down into the ground, Taylor?
Beer joint and their big building that ran right along here. But see now, all of that, we're going on out to the straight ahead.
I just got something coming up on
Okay. But you see how all of the smaller trees have come up in there from the big one? That's why that particular style or variety of Australian pine is illegal to plant in the state of Florida. The one that we planted for windbreaks around our fields, all of the ones that we had are gone now, but the ones we planted for windbreaks that were not invasive. They had a little pine cone about the size of the end of your little finger, and trying to get anything out of those to plant was almost impossible.
You know what it's used by windbreaks, right? Where was it?
Yeah, I assume it's just growing something to keep the wind off of the mangroves and tomatoes.
Off the tomatoes,
Yeah.
Keep it from damaging them.
Right.
Now, up until somewhere in the late 30s, John Y., this building on the right, we're crossing the canal right here. All right, this is
the left here.
This building and that building as such, but it was up in the air and had a garage underneath it. That's where Lou and McGriff was raised.
Really?
Yes, sir.
That's the man that married me and Mom, Wesley. Lou McGriff was.
All right, we're not going that way, but this highway, Old 41, went up alongside the railroad track.
Just a minute, okay.
Well, we can go
I
up
got
that
something
way and then
up
come
that
back.
way,
Yeah, because we can get out up here. That's fine.
Okay.
But this, and there was nothing, I don't think, of any consequence here. You can just go on up.
Okay.
But this 41 going along here, and then when it got up to about where you can see the overpasses now and all, that's where it turned, and it was a grade level crossing that and from there it went a mile north straight through Ruskin. And that is all of what was the original Ruskin development. But
I left it at the Cub meeting last week, or week before, and never got it back.
See, this was my cousin's, one of his fields where they used to grow squash a lot. But this bigger curve to go and head back toward the river. Well, there had been a governor's election just before that. And the only time that I really remember my father getting off on the wrong candidate was that particular year. And the only real person that used to aggravate him politically was a man whose family had been pioneers out the other side of Wimauma, but had gone to town. And there was a 10-acre block right here. It started here and went up here a ways. And the man that...
The lady we talked to at Florida Folk Festival with the milkshakes, this is her, that Morgan's right there, that's her place right there. And her dad or her uncle used to have a station right here, a service station.
It was her dad.
Her dad, okay.
Okay, anyhow. Now from here, you can see the railroad trestle, and the old highway used to come across, but then it made a bend and followed alongside of the river until you got up past those Australian pines there off to the left. But anyhow, the man who owned that property back there on both sides of the highway was the man whose candidate got elected that governor's race. And so somehow or other, the highway was designed to come through the middle of his property when they redesigned coming off, and you're going to turn to the right at the light. There's an area right here that was referred to as Ball Town. Mr. Ball was a seafood broker and handled mullet and shipped to New York and all that stuff. And he owned a good part of the property around here with he used to have a turpentine still right in there that blew up one time.
Okay, now Sharon, that we yard sale with up in Wisconsin, she lives in one of these parks here on the right.
I'll show you which one. It's the one around this. She was in the one on the left, and then when she moved the last time, she moved the one that's around the bend just a little bit. Anyhow, the man that won the governor's race, what is it?
It's this jerk behind.
Oh, okay.
He came up and flipped his lights.
Okay,
because I was moving fast enough.
But anyhow, he also discovered that the 10 acres I was referring to, we never owned, but Dad rented the farm. And so now there's a Willis or two. This is the old Gulf City Cemetery. And there's a relative or two in there. And when he found out the highway was also coming through that, he went to the governor and said they had to change it. And the governor told him a week or two later, after he checked into it, if they changed it, it would have to miss his property too. And he was just real upset because he felt like Henry Willis was getting a benefit of the new highway somehow or other. And he went back to the governor again, and the governor finally told him, he said, look, he says, I can control what's going on that we're talking about. He says, but if you start talking about a lot, there's some of there's that, I don't know what they're planting, that looks like lettuce or leaf thing or something. Anyhow, the governor finally told Mr. Saffold that he had better be satisfied and happy with what he was getting, because if he went to something that required a vote of the cabinet, not just the governor, that probably Henry Willis would have more influence than the governor did. Sharon's trailer is right over to the right in about this third line, right about there. Just back in from the entrance.
Now, do we want to go back up in here